Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Gweike Cloud 50-watt CO2 laser engraving and cutting machine. This is not only the most powerful machine I have reviewed yet, but it is also my first CO2 machine that I have used. This is the Pro bundle of the machine, so what sets it apart from some of the other CO2 lasers out there, and what do I think of this machine? Well, let's find out. Gweike might not be a name very familiar to many in the desktop laser engraving space, but it has been a company that's been around for 18 years making industrial and commercial lasers. They have brought those years of experience into a somewhat desktop machine. Now I say somewhat because, as you can see, this machine is a beast. When I said that this was the most powerful laser I have reviewed, it is also the largest and heaviest machine. I really didn't have any idea how big or heavy it was until it arrived in a wood crate. You will definitely need another person to help with the moving or unpacking of this machine. The machine comes very well packed and protected. The crate even comes with a shock sensor to let you know if the machine has been shipped properly. Like I said before, this is the Pro bundle of the machine, so it also comes with a large air filter with a built-in air pump for an air assist, a blower fan with a nice wireless controller to help remove the smoke and fumes and vent them outside, and not one but two rotary attachments to be able to engrave on cylindrical objects. There is also a little toolbox with some supplies like rulers, some cleaning materials, tools, a 63.5mm focal lens, and other assorted parts. My bundle also came with this large box of materials to help me get cutting right away. The materials also have a QR code on it that can be read by the machine to change some of the settings, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the biggest difference of this machine is the type of laser that it uses. Instead of the smaller diode laser modules, the machine uses a gas-filled glass tube that passes high voltage through the tube to convert that electricity into an intensely hot 50-watt light beam. That beam is then reflected through 3 mirrors and then finally down through a focusing lens to the part you are cutting or engraving on. The beam is invisible and works in a different wavelength than a diode laser does. What this means is that this is the first laser that I have that can cut clear materials like acrylic, which none of my other lasers can. Now, to be able to use all of this power, the glass tube needs to be cooled down. On some of the cheaper CO2 machines on the market, you have to hook up some sort of water chiller or an icy bucket of water with a pump inside to cool down that tube. On this machine, there is an internal system that pumps coolant through the glass tube and then through a radiator, so there's no need for any other external cooling. Everything is contained within this machine. The workable area of the Gweike Cloud is 510mm in the X and 300mm in the Y. There is also a pass-through on the back of the machine, so you could fit longer material through, but it would really only accommodate about 3mm thick. Given the size of the machine and the fact that the exhaust hose is right above that slot, I'm not sure how useful that slot would be. The machine itself can only accommodate 17mm of height when using the honeycomb. If you remove the honeycomb, you do have a little bit more room to work with when engraving taller objects. This laser is also very fast to go with all of that 50 watts of power. It can engrave up to 600mm per second or 36,000mm per minute. The laser is focused by adjusting the Z height of the lens through the software, so there's no need to manually adjust the height. You simply have to measure the thickness of the part you are trying to engrave and then use a chart online to enter the focus height of your piece. So now this brings me to one of the parts that sets this machine apart from something like the Glowforge machine that might be a little bit more known here in the US, and that is how you are able to control this machine. The Gweike Cloud can be operated with online cloud software over Wi-Fi, but it can also be used offline directly with Lightburn, which the Glowforge cannot. I know that for some, being able to control the machine using Lightburn is an incredibly attractive part of this machine. The online software for the machine does work, but it's pretty limited in what it can do. So for sending simple jobs to the machine, it works just fine. There is also an offline version of the software that seems to be far more comprehensive when it comes to the files that you can create in the software. It seems to look like it could do much of the same stuff that Lightburn software could do, but since the machine can also use Lightburn and it's already a program that I know, I decided to use that instead. The only thing to mention here is that this laser uses a different type of controller than something like my other machines that were controlled with Gerbil and G-code. This means that you would have to purchase an upgrade to your license if you already had that G-code license, or purchase the DSP license if you didn't have any before to be able to use Lightburn with this machine. Again, the offline cloud software from the company is included, and there's no extra charge for that if you want to go that route. If you opt to use the free online Gweike software, you just need to create an account and then sign in to access the software. There are a few steps you need to follow to hook up your machine online, but the documentation is pretty good to get you set up. Once you access the cloud, there's a place to start to upload your own content, or you can choose from a pretty large library of existing projects the company provides to you to get started right away making some pieces. They are free and just require that you download them to use them. I really like this intricate candy box, so I thought it would be perfect for my first test on this machine. You can just download it and it sends the files to your projects. Once you are in your projects, you can select that file and then click on Print. It will open the working screen where you should be able to see your working area superimposed under the design that you have open. The machine is equipped with an overhead camera that allows you to line up your design onto the piece you are cutting or engraving on. Click on the design, and then you can adjust the speed and power settings by clicking on Enter Settings on the left of the screen. You can also choose the material on the top left corner, but this is also where that QR code comes into play that I mentioned before. If you click on Auto at the top, if it already didn't do this when you entered in your material, it will read that QR code and change your power, speed, and thickness to the proper settings automatically for you. So that is what I did for this box, and I was very happy with how this box came out. It cut out everything perfectly the first time without adjusting anything, and I was so impressed with the detail that I stained the box and will definitely be using it. It is a really nice and finished piece and only took a few minutes to make. With the first test done, I was really excited to try out something that I have not been able to do with any of my other lasers. I was so impressed with the quality of that first box that I decided to make one, but this time make it out of clear acrylic. I just placed a new piece of acrylic in the machine from the material pack and allowed the machine to auto-detect the settings and then clicked on Print. It performed the cut flawlessly, and I could have not been happier with how this piece turned out. The one thing that I wanted to point out here, because it will also be an issue in Lightburn, are these red and blue dotted outlines that you can see in this image. These represent the workable area for both cutting and engraving. The red outline is the cutting and the blue outline is the engraving. If you try to cut or engrave outside of that area, the machine will show a red warning light on the button on the top, which tells you that there is an error. These are a buffer area that the machine requires. Unfortunately, you can't see these lines in Lightburn, but if you send a job to the machine and it's able to frame, but then when you go to actually cut, it doesn't work and you get that error, that's most likely the culprit. With the machine working, I decided to get Lightburn up and running because while the cloud software can handle light work, it really does not have a full set of tools that you might want to use with something like Lightburn. Again, there is an offline version of the software with many more features, but since I'm familiar with Lightburn, I opted for that instead. To use Lightburn, there are a few things that you have to set up. First, like I said before, you need a DSP license and not the regular G-code version. The second thing that you will need is to attach the included USB cable to the back of the machine and then connect that to your computer. The final thing that you have to set up is the camera for the connection to Lightburn. The camera as it comes from the factory will not work directly in Lightburn. The machine comes with a separate cord that plugs into the camera and then directly into a USB port on your computer. You then have to go through some steps to calibrate both your lenses and camera alignment to be able to see the camera setup in Lightburn. There are a few tutorials on the company website and YouTube already to help you with that procedure. With that all set up, I wanted to try out this mural, which turned out very nice. I tested a few small sections of it on the back to dial in my settings. Again, you have to be sure to set the proper height of the laser based on the thickness of the material. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have to manually set that height in Lightburn with every job. The machine will home after the job is complete and zero out that laser height. To adjust the laser height in Lightburn, you must first click on the Move tab to enter the move settings. I would then suggest click on the Get Position button to find out where your laser height is at the moment. You can see here that the Z height is at 0. Now, based on the thickness of the material you are cutting, you can refer to this chart for the height that the lens has to be at. So for this 15 millimeter piece of wood, the laser height needs to be 2 millimeters. Change the distance in the Move tab to 2 millimeters. Then you must click in the bottom left corner the Move Z button to move to that Z height. This can be a little hard to tell if it does anything if you have that protective cover on top of your lens, but you can also click on that Get Position and see the Z values are now correct. Now again, I want to warn you that you have to do this setup every single time you set up a job with this machine. It will always reset to 0 after the job. After the last image, I wanted to try out an engraving and cutting at the same job, so I burned this B file that I had. It again turned out very nice, especially when you consider that this machine can burn up to 1000 dpi. Again, the machine worked flawlessly. I next wanted to try out both engraving and cutting in Lightburn on clear acrylic, so I decided to make some plaques for my daughter's soccer team. I set up the files in Lightburn and clicked Start. It seemed to be working great, but then something seemed to happen to the file when it started the cutting procedure. I'm not really sure what happened, but something, somewhere, somehow, the cut path was incorrect. I'm not sure if it was the machine or Lightburn, but something happened and it cut the wrong path in the middle of the file. I was really confused because it didn't hit anything, and then it recovered for the rest of the cut. This taught me something of a good lesson about creating such a large file. Not only is it a bummer if a long print takes a long time just to mess up, but it also takes longer than if I was to do all of these individually. When doing a lot of parts at the same time, it has to cover a lot of white space that's just wasted time. If I set up 1 or 2 to cut at the same time, it wouldn't have to travel over all that white space and take longer and potentially ruin more than one piece. This ruined 3 pieces, but when I went to go redo them individually, it went much faster and worked great. Again, I'm not really sure what happened, and it has not happened since. These turned out great and were a big hit with the team. The last thing that I wanted to try out, and is another thing that sets this machine above some of the others like the Glowforge, is the fact that you can use a rotary for cylindrical objects with this machine. Mine came with 2 versions of the rotary, one for objects with a diameter of 30 to 60 millimeters, and one for a diameter of 60 to 75 millimeters. You pull out the debris tray and the honeycomb, and then you place the rotary on the table through the hole. You line up the rotary with the bottom left corner to align it, and then put the port in the back of the machine. If you're using Lightburn, you flip up the left-hand switch and leave the right-hand switch facing down. If you're using the Gweike Cloud software, you flip up both switches. You then manually move the gantry to the arrow that corresponds with the rotary tool that you are using. So here I'm using the number 2 rotary tool, so I line it up with the number 2 arrow on the side of the machine. Now, this is where there was a part missing in their instruction video online. Since I had to remove the debris tray and the honeycomb, there's no longer anything hitting the back limit switch that is telling the machine that it is closed and secure. You must move over this metal bracket to engage that limit switch, or the burn will error out. I also like to cover the front of the machine with something to make sure that the invisible infrared radiation does not escape, which can be dangerous to your vision. Another thing that the rotaries are equipped with is a scissor lift that will lift one end of the tapered cup up so that you can get a level surface to burn on. I wish the laser also came with a level to aid in this, but it doesn't, and I already had this one, so I used it. You can pick up one of these for pretty cheap. After the object is level, you need to use that toolbox we talked about before and take out a measuring tool to measure the height of the object from the surface of the table to the highest point on the cup or tumbler or whatever cylindrical object you're using. You then subtract that value from 86.2, and that is the Z height that you need to set your laser to burn your image. In Lightburn, you do not need to use any of the rotary tool settings. You just burn on it like you would on a flat surface. You just place the image over the object, change your height settings, and click on Start. It will work right over the surface. Now, the one complaint I have about this is the diameter that you can use. As I said, you can engrave objects up to 75 millimeters in diameter. Unfortunately, that is not that large, and anything over that will hit the lens gantry. All of the tumblers that I normally engrave on are 87 millimeters in diameter, so they would be too large for this setup. So my solution to this, and this is in no way sanctioned or recommended by the company, was to lift the entire machine up so that I could fit a larger tumbler underneath. I happen to have some of the solid stainless steel parts from my Buster Beagle 3D injection molding machine, so I placed those under the 4 feet of the machine to lift it up about 25 inches. Now again, this machine is heavy, so you have to be very careful attempting something like this, and do it at your own risk. So with the machine elevated, I was able to fit my 87 millimeter diameter tumbler and then just added the extra height onto the calculation for the focal height. It worked out fine and was very stable. I burned this image in about 8 minutes at 400 dpi. I ran it at a speed of 250 millimeters per second at 60% power, and it turned out very nice. So now I want to talk about that box over on the other side of the machine. Now the reason it's over on that other side, first and foremost, is because that's literally the only way to have that set up with the provided wires. The wires are so short, it can only go there without getting longer wires or extending the ones that it came with. So the back of this box is a large filter to clean the fumes and smoke coming out of this machine. There is a fan built in that helps out with this process that is similar to the exhaust fan on the back of the machine. Now I just want to make very clear that the air filter does not mean that you can exhaust the fumes from the machine to the room that you are working in. It's only there to help somewhat clean the exhausted air. It was actually my experience that the slowdown of the airflow from the filter limited the suction created by the large blower motor that came with the machine. Since I was already sending the smoke outside, I found that for my usage, it was much better to bypass the filter altogether to have a stronger exhausting. This might not be the same for you, but it's what I found worked for me. Hidden in the front panel of the filter is a mini air compressor that provides the airflow for the air assist on the laser. Now, if you were like me and no longer wanted to use that filter, but still wanted to use the air assist, you can hook up your own air pump, which I already happen to have, to continue to use the air assist. Now, the other reason that I did not want to use the air filter was that it was a bit loud. The machine by itself, with its exhaust fan and cooling system, is listed at around 70 decibels by the company, which is about the noise level of a loud dishwasher. The air filter has another large fan in it, as well as that air pump that easily adds double or triple the noises of the machine, as well as the vibration of that air pump. This is also on full blast anytime you have the machine on. There is no way that I have seen to only turn this on while burning. I honestly felt that for my needs, it would just be better to bypass it altogether. Now the next part that I want to talk about is that you really want to set up this machine in a place with proper ventilation, such as a workshop, garage, or somewhere near a window. Even with all the filters and exhaust fans, you will still be able to smell the burning coming from the machine depending on what you're working on. I feel like that is in part due to some gaps and some slots in the machine. With the machine on, you can see some areas where light escapes, which also means that the smoke and fumes might be able to escape as well. When I was cutting acrylic here in my office with the machine, my wife was not very pleased with me. I found that I could use some masking tape to seal off the seams, which all but eliminated those smells. Now, if you seal off the top, you still have access through the front debris tray, so I can still use the machine. I guess the point is that you really want to be careful where you set up a machine like this, and be careful what fumes you are exposing those around you to. Now, there are materials that you should never use in any laser cutter, like vinyl records, which give off poisonous gases when burned. You also have to be careful with certain MDF boards, which may contain formaldehyde. You just really want to be safe with this or any laser that you use. Never leave this laser unattended. This machine is also equipped with sensors that will pause the machine if the front tray is open during a burn or if the top glass is lifted. This is all to limit any exposures to the potentially harmful invisible radiation that this laser emits while burning. You are completely safe outside of the machine, but it never hurts to take extra precautions. So now for my overall thoughts on this machine. First of all, I wanted to say what a solid machine this is. This is really for the individual or business that really wants to add a quality piece of equipment to their shop or business, and they are serious about engraving and cutting. I was able to start using this machine straight out of the box with little to no setup at all. There is a lot of documentation online for the basic usage, but there were a few things that I thought might be lacking in the documentation, such as the additional components like the extra lens and things like using the light targets. All things that I will have to look into the future using this machine. This machine is powerful, versatile, fast, and can perform tasks that many of my other machines cannot, such as cutting that clear acrylic. You do need to be able to have a dedicated spot for this machine, and don't forget to leave some extra room for that air filter if you're going to use it, as well as all the rear hoses. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is the support that seems to come with this machine. I had a few questions that I needed help from the company in answering while using the machine, and at all times of the day, I was able to talk to a live person who then put me in touch with an engineer from the company to help me with my issue. Now, I wanted to point out that they did not know that I was from this YouTube channel doing the review. I didn't go through any contact that I had with the company that loaned me this machine for a review. I was just a regular customer with questions and found my answers quickly using the chat on their website, so there wasn't any special treatment going on. So it's really nice to know that if you're having an issue with this machine, even though this company is in China, that you are able to get the support that you need when you need it. So that's really it. If you're in the market for a machine like this, it's really a nice choice. While I don't have a Glowforge to compare it with, the Gweike being somewhere around half the cost of the Glowforge Pro with more features such as the Rotary and the ability to use Lightburn on this machine seems like a no-brainer there. Also, depending on when you view this, if you check in the description, there is a $200 coupon that Gweike was nice enough to offer my viewers, as well as Black Friday sales that make it an especially good time to pick up one if you're in the market to do so. I wanted to thank Gweike for loaning this machine to me so that I could test it out. There are some affiliate links in the description that do help out the channel if you are so inclined to use them, but if not, that's okay as well, and I hope I was able to shed a little bit more light on this product. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, please do hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content having to do with laser engravers, desktop injection molding, 3D printers, and all things maker. Thank you again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.